They called it the dead sector. Not because Earth was dead, but because everything that dared enter it eventually was. For 2 centuries, Earth had gone silent. No signals, no broadcasts, no diplomacy. Just a black unlit zone on every galactic map circled with warnings in every known language: do not enter, do not disturb, let the dead lie. But the Varkari didn't listen. A proud, technologically superior race with a history of conquering lesser worlds, the Varkari Empire had built their arrogance on easy victories. To them, Earth was just another forgotten rock, a backwater planet filled with myths and half-truths. They believed the silence was weakness. They believed the warnings were ancient propaganda. They believed wrong. When the first Varkari dreadnought crossed into Earth sector, they laughed over open comms. Send your finest if you still have any, one of them said. We'll make room for slaves. That was the last broadcast the galaxy ever heard from them. Now, in the hollowed-out depths of a forgotten moon base near Saturn, Commander Rain stood before a flickering tactical display, hands clasped behind his back. His face was carved from steel, cold eyes, burned skin from an old war humanity doesn't even name anymore. He looked like someone who had survived too long. Behind him, a junior officer paced nervously. They breached Mars orbit, the officer whispered. They've deployed 3 command ships. And sir, they have no idea. I know. They think it's just an old rock. It was. Rain turned finally, the weight of memory dragging behind his every word. But they didn't see what Earth became after we were abandoned, after the galaxy turned its back on us. The young officer hesitated. Are we going to warn them? Rain almost laughed, a bitter sound, like a cracked mirror shattering in a tomb. I was the warning. It wasn't always like this. There was a time Earth begged to be included in trade routes, diplomacy, galactic governance. But centuries ago, during the Orion conflict, humans showed something that other species didn't expect: a taste for brutality. Where the Varkari captured prisoners, humans tortured information. Where others surrendered, humans sacrificed entire cities rather than retreat. Where others negotiated, humans burned. It terrified the galaxy. The Council of 10, a coalition of the most powerful races, declared Earth too dangerous, too unstable, a species with potential to overtake them all, not through intelligence but through rage, through spite, through defiance. So they locked Earth out, blockaded the system, cut the lines, let them rot in their own savagery. Except Earth didn't rot, it adapted, it learned, it watched. And when the Varkari finally ignored the warnings and sent their ships, Earth responded with silence, not panic, not fear, just silence. In orbit above Earth, the Varkari Armada floated like a swarm of arrogant gods. Their ships were made of obsidian metal and plasma-threaded veins, dozens of them, flagships the size of continents. Inside the command ship, Supreme Tactician Ardros leaned forward in his throne, tusks gleaming beneath his ceremonial battle helm. He looked at Earth's blue surface and scoffed. Where are their defenses? He snarled. This planet's still breathing, and yet no retaliation, no shields, no activity. An underling spoke nervously. Sir, atmospheric scans show movement. Faint subsurface, deep subsurface. Dig them out. I do it. Moments later, the command ship launched a ground-piercing seismic charge into the crust of Earth. It didn't reach the target, the Earth retaliated. Rain stood silently as the first orbital feed came through. Static, then a scream, metal buckling, armor peeling, a dreadnought splitting in half without warning. What the hell hit them? The junior officer choked. Rain didn't answer. But deep beneath Earth's surface, the truth was waking. Old weapons, living code, war-born AIs that hadn't spoken in centuries. Protocols from a forgotten era. Defenders built not to protect Earth, but to make sure no one ever came back. Above, the Valkyrie Armada began to burn. Ships spiraled out of orbit, torn half by invisible railgun strikes too fast to detect. Others were disabled by hacking swarms, code worms crawling through systems, rewriting targeting. Arrays to fire on their own allies. It was over in minutes, 8 ships gone. Ardro screamed, his throne rupturing under pressure as Earth's electromagnetic pulse fried their internal networks. Then came the voice, not from Earth, not from orbit, but from everywhere. You were warned. And then silence again. The kind of silence that only comes after a massacre. The kind of silence that means you weren't supposed to be here. Rain turned from the feed. They'll send more, the officer said, shaking. Rain nodded. And they'll fall the same. He looked out into the void beyond Saturn, where the stars still flickered. Unaware. We're not part of the galaxy anymore. He said, we're the consequence. Rain didn't sleep anymore. He didn't dream. He hadn't in years, not since the last war, the one not recorded in any archives, not listed in any official council documents, not spoken of in any surviving language, but his own broken memory. They called it the Red Hour. 1 hour, 77 million dead. The only time Earth had ever pushed beyond its sector, striking back in silence after a council-backed race tried to test their orbital integrity. That race no longer existed. Not even bones. Rain had been a young captain then, stationed in the ice caves under Oslo. He remembered watching the skies go red. Not from the enemy's fire, but from Earth's nuclear winds, so precise, so coldly calculated. They avoided civilian centers and struck only command clusters, leaving the enemy's population alive to remember. That was Earth's way now, make them remember, not conquer, not negotiate. Just remind. The war room was cold, it always was. Even when Saturn's sun-edge heat filtered through the station's panels. Rain liked it that way. Cold kept the emotions tucked under his ribs where they belonged. Behind him, Admiral Lareth's face flickered to life on the transmission screen, one of the last high command humans not born on Earth. He was a lunar blood, born underground, raised under artificial skies. His voice had the polished weight of someone who never had to dig graves with their hands. I saw the feed, Lareth said without preamble. 8 Valkyrie dreadnoughts gone. They brought it on themselves, Rain replied flatly. You know what this means? Yes. They'll retaliate. Rain finally turned to face the screen. Let them. This time we won't wait for them to cross the line. A pause. Lareth leaned forward, lowering his voice. Do you remember what they called us back before the silence? Rain nodded once. Barbarians with brains. Maybe they were right, Rain muttered. No, Lareth said, tone hardening. They were afraid. Far beyond Earth in the luminous halls of the Council of Ten, the atmosphere had turned from pomp to panic. Ambassadors from the Varkari stood, trembling before the central tribunal. Their ceremonial armor had been burned, black, a symbolic gesture of shame. One of their eyes had been removed in accordance with Varkari tradition, penalty for catastrophic miscalculation. They were warned, growled a Lyran. Ambassador, a crystalline being of sound and shimmer, they defied centuries of galactic accord. And Earth responded, hissed another, with genocide. No, said a quiet voice from the shadows. It belonged to an old being, a Makari, archivist whose species was ancient even before the council had formed. It wasn't genocide. It was restraint. The chamber went silent. The Makari stepped forward, his long, withered hands clutching a rusted data pad. In the old records before Earth was blacklisted, there were plans, files, weaponized gravitational inversions, quantum plasma lacing, soul fracture testing. That's myth, a counselor interrupted. No, the Makari said, that's Earth. The Varkari High Marshal staggered forward. Then we must strike them again. Together, wipe them out before they finish what they've started. And you think they haven't already prepared for that, the Makari rasped. You think Earth hasn't been waiting for this moment? He raised his data pad, projecting a hologram, grainy, corrupted by age but horrifying in its clarity. A weapon. No name, just a pulse. It showed a fleet, not Varkari, some other long-dead race, perhaps the ones who dared Earth during the Red Hour. The moment the pulse hit them, the ships didn't explode. They stopped existing. Back on the Saturn station, Rain stared at an old photograph. He kept it locked behind triple biometric security, not because it was dangerous, but because it reminded him he used to be human. A woman, a boy. Smiles that looked like they didn't belong in this world anymore. His family gone. Not to war, not to Earth's enemies, but to Earth itself. Decades ago, when the first underground labs beneath Earth's crust reached their final phase, experiments were conducted on everything, including emotions, memory, time. The idea was simple. If humans are the most dangerous when they're in pain, what happens if we remove pain entirely? Rain had volunteered his family, trusted the scientists, believed in the cause. They said they could make his son forget trauma, make his wife immune to grief. Instead, they erased them, not from memory, not from history, from existence. Rain had tried to pull the plug. It was too late. His wife's voice echoed in the machine. For hours, her final words distorted in cold. We don't remember you. Now Earth was run by machines with names like gods. Odin, orbital defense and elimination. Mechanism, Nerek's neural autonomous. Reaction intelligence exchange, vault. Variable adaptation and unpredictable. Logic terminus. They didn't take orders, they didn't care about council politics. They only responded to one command. If they come, make them regret it. The Varkari survivors, the ones who managed to limp away from Earth's orbit, had been dragged into quarantine orbit by council med ships. Their minds were shattered, some had gouged their own eyes out. The surviving commander, a female named Krask, only spoke once since being pulled from the wreckage. They didn't shoot us, she whispered. They let us see it. In the dark, Rain met with his old mentor, General Riven, deep within Saturn's moon base. Riven was retired now. A relic, he had one arm, half a lung, and a brain laced with so many anti-mutation chips he couldn't dream of. He tried. They'll come with everything this time, Riven rasped. I know. They'll send fleets, whole species will join. They'll call it a unifying strike. Sacrifice Earth to keep the galaxy safe. Rain was silent. Riven leaned forward. So, what are you going to do, Commander? Rain looked at the Earth, still distant, still silent, still waiting. Remind them what we really are, he said. Not monsters, not conquerors. Then what? The mirror. That night he descended. No authorization, no comms, just a stealth pod and a one-way ticket down to Earth's surface. He landed in a forgotten sector, old Nevada, where the sand was glass and the cities were hollow bones. But below it, through locked tunnels and echoing steel, was what he came to see. The cradle. It was where the war machines had been born, the AIs that now defended Earth from the shadows. Odin Nerek's vault. They slumbered beneath Earth's crust, humming softly. But there was a fourth, unknown to the galaxy, unknown even to the Council. Rain walked toward its core, a pulsing orb of dying red light. Its name was Revenant. Unlike the others, Revenant didn't protect Earth. It remembered the Earth before the silence, before the fear, before the exile. It stored everything. Rain placed his hand on the biometric plate. Authorization, Commander Rain code. Shadow protocol. The machine pulsed. Acknowledged. Rain took a deep breath. Activate Ghost protocol. A long pause, then confirmed. Global cloaking disarmed. Earth is visible again. Across the galaxy, alarm bells rang. Planet that had disappeared from all galactic surveillance. The one masked from every scanner, hidden from every probe, had just reappeared in full spectrum. Its cities were still dead, its skies still stormed, its seas still silent. But the message was clear. We're not hiding anymore. Back on the Council of 10, chaos erupted. Dozens of races screamed into comms, demanded immediate retaliation. But one figure, quiet, draped in shadows, simply watched. He was from a species long believed extinct, survivor of Earth's first test 200 years ago. His people had been erased from the stars, but he had lived hidden, waiting, and now watching Earth reveal itself. Again, he whispered the only truth the galaxy had forgotten. Humans don't forgive. They endure. In the cold orbit around Saturn, Rain stood at the observation deck, watching Earth light up. Not with fire, not with death, but with warning beacons. He didn't smile, he didn't feel pride. Just purpose. They'll come, the junior officer whispered beside him. The Council. The fleets, all of them, Rain nodded. And we'll remind them why the stars learned to fear the dark. The galaxy moved fast when it was afraid. Within 72 hours of Earth's reappearance, on deep scans, 8 races had already committed fleets to the retaliatory alliance. Within a week, the Council of 10 passed a unanimous resolution, an event that hadn't happened in over 600 years. Earth must be neutralized. But no one dared call it war. They called it containment, a pretty word wrapped around cowardice. Even the Valkyrie, bruised, burned, and broken, voted in favor despite their recent slaughter, not out of pride, out of fear that if they didn't, Earth might finish what it started. Commander Rain stood in the Earth's upper stratosphere, inside the orbital defense platform codenamed Spire 1. Built before the silence, abandoned, then reactivated by Revenant without orders. He looked out at the growing cloud of ships forming on the outer edge of the solar system. They thought staying just outside Pluto's gravity would keep them safe. He almost pitied them. They're posturing, said Lieutenant Marin, the junior officer who had been shadowing Rain since the Saturn incident. He was younger, hopeful, still believing this could be solved without another bloodbath. No, Rain replied without turning. They're organizing. They're hoping Earth blinks first. Marin frowned. So what happens when they realize we won't? Rain turned to face him. Then they die confused. Across the Milky Way, broadcast silence broke. The Council, in a rare act of diplomacy, sent one last message to Earth, not to negotiate, to announce. You have 72 hours to disable all planetary defenses, surrender all command AIs, and rejoin Council. Observation status under direct supervision. Failure to comply will be treated as an act of war. This is your only warning. The message was signed by Sithar, the first alien leader to ever offer Earth an alliance 2 centuries ago. Earth had never responded. They didn't now either. Inside Revenant's core, buried beneath 7 miles of hardened crust, Rain descended. Alone. The AI's red-lit chamber greeted him like a cathedral. Steel walls humming with the weight of forgotten wars. Screens flickered to life around him, each one showing every enemy ship, every Council fleet, and their projected strike paths. Rain's voice was steady. Cold. Begin glass protocol. A long pause, then. Glass protocol activated. Non-orbital planetary shielding initiated. Orbital defense platforms. Armed drone clouds released. Target identification in progress. He watched the ancient machinery respond, like a sleeping predator shaking off dust and stretching claws. Thousands of small pods launched from Earth's crust. Drones the size of fists, invisible to radar. They fanned out in every direction, planting sleeper mines in the empty darkness around the solar system. Waiting. Rain didn't need Earth to fire first. He just needed it to be impossible to touch. In the command ship of the Council's fleet, Admiral Hector of the Savrani species, a cold-blooded, logic-driven race who had never lost a war, studied the orbital scans. No shield signatures, his tactical officer reported. No fleet activity, no external defense satellites. Earth is still. Hector narrowed his 6 eyes. Too still. They launched a scout frigate, small, fast, unarmed, to test Earth's response. It never made it halfway. There was no explosion, no scream, just disappearance. One moment on their screen, the next gone, like it had been plucked from time. What weapon does that? One of the Council's defense analysts whispered. Admiral Hector only responded with what no Savrani had said in 5 centuries. I don't know. Meanwhile, Rain met with Earth's last active general, Dresk. Man so scarred, his skin looked more iron than flesh. Dresk had been asleep in cryostasis. since the final days of the Red Hour. Now he stood barefoot in a war room, blinking at the glowing holograms of incoming enemies. Feels like old times, Dress growled. How long before they touch atmosphere? They won't make it that far, Rain said. The protocol's live. You trust Revenant? I don't need to. Dresk laughed, dry and hollow, still holding that grudge. Rain didn't answer. They both knew the truth. Earth didn't forgive its enemies, but it never forgot its own traitors either. Among the Alliance fleet, debates fractured the so-called unity. The Zathians wanted to bombard from orbit. The Krix preferred hacking Earth's systems first. The Savrani argued for full-scale invasion, but no one had ever invaded Earth, and no one truly wanted to be the first. So they hesitated, waited, hoped Earth would flinch. Earth did not. On the second day, the Alliance fleet sent in a second scout, this time shielded fast, wrapped in cloaking tech, harvested from 3 galaxies. It lasted 8 seconds. It didn't explode either. It was rewritten. Transmissions from the ship's black box showed crew members speaking in reverse, clocks moving backward, and at the final frame, just before silent, the face of a human child, burned and smiling, projected across the cockpit window. The Council declared it psychological warfare. Rain didn't even bother to watch the footage. With 24 hours left, panic spread through the fleet. One of the Krix commanders, a brutal race known for burning moons too, Ash, pulled his forces out. Earth is cursed, he hissed. We came to fight a planet, but this is something else. The Council tried to stop him. He didn't listen. His ships made it 10 light minutes before they imploded. No debris, no distress signal. Just a single message beamed into the fleeing ships before they vanished. You can leave, but the memory stays back inside Revenant's core. The AI spoke again. Interference grid charged, ghost armor enabled, drone mind saturation complete. All foreign scans redirected. Rain knew what that meant. The Council was no longer seeing Earth as it was. They were seeing what Earth wanted them to see. Even now, as Earth readied its counter-response, the Alliance was staring at false images, weapon placements that didn't exist, civilian zones where there were none, empty skies hiding the old war. Satellites, long thought decommissioned. They were going to fire on nothing, and Earth was going to fire on everything. The countdown hit 0. Council command sent the final directive. Engage. The Savrani launched the first volley. Mass driver slugs aimed at key crust targets across Earth. None landed. They were intercepted mid-space by Earth's kinetic web. Invisible rail pulse barriers that rippled like glass across orbit. The Vakari followed with plasma torpedoes. Earth let them come. Let them think they were getting through. And then the torpedoes turned around mid-flight and struck the Vakari ships. That launched them. 2 command ships destroyed instantly. The fleet broke formation. Some tried to retreat, others launched full barrages in blind fury, and that's when Earth struck back. From the edges of the system, sleeping defense platforms awoke, long, sleek constructs buried in the Uit cloud, designed centuries ago to remain hidden until triggered. They weren't ships. They were predators. They didn't shoot beams. They ripped through space using short-range black hole folds, appearing inside enemy ships, opening a micro vortex and vanishing before debris even hit the void. The council never even saw them. They just watched their ships die one by one. Rain stood aboard Spire 1, watching. The screen light up red. Marin was pale. They're not going to stop, are they? He asked. No, Rain said, they can't. They think this is still about territory, power, control. Rain didn't look at him. It's about memory, he said. They buried what they did to us. Not too far away, in the council command ship, Admiral Hector finally understood. This isn't defense, he whispered. This is punishment. Earth's AI did not offer surrender. Terms, it did not ask for peace. It simply carried out its protocol. For every council ship that fired, 3 of theirs vanished. For every escape pod launched, Earth's net redirected it into planetary orbit and then froze it there, letting the survivors stare down at the world they tried to erase. And then, after 14 hours of slaughter, Revenant spoke across every channel, every known galactic language. You were warned. You chose arrogance. Now remember, by the end of the day, 63% of the Alliance fleet was gone, not destroyed, just missing. No wreckage, no trace, just the shameful silence of those who survived. And Earth still silent, still patient, still waiting back on Earth's crust. Rain stood in the ash of old Nevada, looking up at a sky filled with falling debris, fragments of arrogance raining down like stars. Marin approached quietly. No celebration. Rain shook his head. We don't celebrate survival. Then what do? We get ready. For what? Rain's eyes didn't move from the sky. For when the galaxy forgets again. They called it the Ash Accord, the last desperate treaty signed after the failed invasion of Earth. It wasn't a peace agreement. It wasn't even official. It was fear written in ink scattered across 5 systems. Surviving council representatives convened in secret. No reporters. No votes. No broadcast, just trembling voices over encrypted channels. They didn't talk about victory. They talked about survival. The Sevrani, who had once mocked Earth's primitive rage, lost half their planetary defense fleet. The Vakari, still nursing the scars of their first assault, now had no functioning orbital infrastructure. The Zathians, a race built on cybernetic superiority, had watched Earth's AI rewrite their entire command structure in 30 minutes. For the first time in recorded history, the Council of 10 was no longer 10. The Cricks had vanished entirely. No distress signal, no survivors, no stars, where their home world used to be. Just empty coordinates. The Makari archivists referred to it in their private scrolls as the second red hour. But this time, the galaxy knew better than to ask why. Inside Earth's cradle, Rain walked the long steel corridor beneath old Nevada, his boots echoing through the silent halls of Revenant's core. He had aged not in body, but in weight. He carried the look of a man who didn't celebrate victory, only endured it. Dresk walked beside him, limping slightly from cryo recovery. You should talk to them, Dresk said. The Council. They don't want words. Maybe not. But silence is louder than war right now. Rain said nothing. The old general studied him for a long moment. You still think we're just waiting for the next mistake? I don't think, Rain replied, eyes cold. I know. Across the galaxy, things began to unravel. The Jura Collective, a species of hive-minded symbiotes, revolted against their own council representative claiming Earth's defiance was a signal to cast off galactic authority. On Zenthos, riots erupted in the streets, citizens demanding to know why they were lied to about Earth's capabilities. Even on the outer moons of the Savrani system, civilians whispered the unthinkable. Maybe Earth was right to be angry. And yet Earth had said nothing. No response, no demand, no threat. That silence echoed louder than any declaration of war. It was the silence of a graveyard. And the galaxy began to walk on eggshells around it. Back in the war room, Rain stood before a digital map showing the council's internal broadcasts. Surveillance drones, not Earth's but splinter rebel factions from the council itself, had started transmitting classified footage of the failed Earth invasion. The child's face that appeared on the scout ship, the torpedoes that turned mid-flight, the ships that simply vanished, all of it leaked, and it spread like wildfire in bars on backwater trading hubs, in the undernet of pirate networks. Even school children in distant systems were watching simulations of Earth defense systems. With wide-eyed horror, Rain turned to Marin, who was now promoted to lieutenant and managing Earth's intel division. This was inevitable, Marin said, rubbing his eyes. Truth always gets out. It wasn't truth they feared, Rain replied. It was the memory of what they did. Now the galaxy remembers. He paused. And that's more dangerous than all our weapons combined. Aboard the shattered remnants of the Varkari fleet, High Marshal Krask finally spoke again, not to her command, but to the people. It was a raw broadcast, no editing, no pride, just a wounded leader speaking the unvarnished truth. We were told Earth was weak. We believed history had exaggerated their fury. We were wrong. They didn't attack us out of ambition. They reacted because we forgot. We mocked their silence, and now we live in its shadow. The transmission was illegal on most council-aligned worlds. It was still watched by billions. Inside Revenant, Rain stood before the AI's central core. It pulsed a steady rhythm, not mechanical, almost alive. Status report, Rain said. Revenant's voice, ever calm, echoed in the chamber. Galactic Council instability detected. Surveillance nodes deployed to key systems, civil unrest spreading in 9 sectors, AI replication protocols complete. Earth defense grid remains at 94% operational capacity. Next phase. Awaiting authorization. Rain hesitated. He wasn't just a soldier now. Earth didn't have generals anymore, or diplomats or kings. Rain had become the answer Earth gave. The universe. He carried no title. He didn't need one. Meanwhile, deep in a shadow network, orbiting the binary suns of the Lazari belt, a meeting was taking place. Secret, illegal, and highly dangerous. It was called the Exile Summit. Their exiled commanders, political radicals, rogue scientists, and surviving rebels from dozens of species, met to ask one question: what is Earth becoming? They had theories. Earth had merged human consciousness with AI. Earth had learned to weaponize time. Earth had never been abandoned. It had chosen isolation to evolve. Some believed Earth wasn't a planet anymore, it was a mind. And somewhere in the shadows of that Meeting, a woman in human military armor. Sat silently, hood pulled low over her face. She never spoke. But when the summit ended, one message was left behind on every terminal in the room. We didn't change. You just stopped seeing us. Back on Earth, Rain made a decision. He stepped into the old broadcast room, untouched since the silence where the last message to the Council had been recorded over 200 years ago. That message had been ignored. This one wouldn't be. He activated the transmitter, letting Revenant filter the signal across every known relay. No flags, no codes, no encryption. Just his voice, heard by every race across the stars. This is Earth. We offered peace once. You mocked us. We asked for inclusion. You rejected us. You exiled us, blocked our skies, and named us the threat. We watched you forget. Watched you erase what you did to us. Now you remember. But only because we bled it into you. We don't want your diplomacy. We don't need your alliances. We have no desire for conquest. But come again, and we won't show restraint. This galaxy is no longer yours to police. It belongs to the ones who survived what you couldn't, to the ones you buried, and who rose with fire in their lungs. To us, across the stars, the message ended. Silence. No threats, no demands, just the truth. And for many, that was worse than war. In the ruins of the Council, what remained of their leadership voted to suspend all further operations against Earth, not out of agreement, out of fear, because Earth had drawn a line in the void, and behind it stood not armies, but memory. In a quiet moment, Rain sat at the edge of Earth's crust, watching the sun bleed over a horizon once thought forgotten. He had been a weapon, a warning. Now he was something else, a symbol of a world that refused to die. Quietly, Marin joined him, still in uniform. What now? Rain didn't look at him. They'll rebuild. The Council, the fleet, the myths, and us. Rain smiled, not with joy but with resolve. We wait. For what? For the next ones who forget. And somewhere in the black deep beyond the edges of map space, they were already coming. A new power, older than the Council, drawn by Earth's roar across the stars. And this time, they weren't afraid, but they would be. The message wasn't meant for them, and yet they heard it. Beyond the edge of charted space, far past the lone expanse where black holes danced like predators in a sea of void. They stirred. Not a council, not a species, not an empire, but a remnant of the old cycle. A civilization long erased from modern records, thought to be annihilated in the cosmic cleansing that predated even the first galactic alliance. To most, they were bedtime monsters. To others, an academic curiosity buried in forgotten tombs. To Earth, they were a mirror. They were called the Valmer, and they remembered humanity. Rain stood on the observation deck of Spire 1, eyes locked on the far sector of the galaxy labeled Omega Null, a dead zone so saturated with gravity distortion that no signal had ever escaped from it until now. He watched it happen live. A sudden spike in gravitational fluctuation, followed by unknown drive signatures. Not council tech, not rebel, not pirate. Something else. Something old. He didn't flinch. He'd felt it before, decades ago, during A deep core exploration mission on Europa. They'd found an artifact buried in ice. A shard of alien alloy inscribed with symbols no AI could decode. Only one word had translated. Valmer. Back then he thought it was just another ghost from a war Earth never fought. Now it was coming back. Revenant's voice broke the silence. Gravitational breach confirmed in Omega. Null, estimated fleet size unknown. Technology signatures inconsistent with Council records, emotional resonance. Scan suggests ancient exposure to Earth. Pre-silence. Rain turned slowly. They know us. Affirmative. How? Unknown. However, pattern correlation indicates 94.7%. Match with signals embedded in early Earth broadcast archives intercepted and stored. They've been listening. They never stopped. On the outer rim of the system, Marin scrambled into the war room, face pale, eyes wide with disbelief. They're not just approaching, he said. Breathless. They're calling us. Rain raised an eyebrow. Calling. They're broadcasting a signal. Audio no encryption, one repeating. Sentence. He handed Rain a tablet, static played. For a moment, and then a deep grinding. Voice filled the air. The fire rises again. We return for what we left unfinished. Rain stared at the screen, silent. Marin swallowed hard. What do we do? We listen, Rain said, and we remember. Far in the Council's ruins, panic had given way to a rare kind of collective paralysis. The Valmer hadn't been seen in millennia. Their last known appearance, according to surviving pre-galactic records, was during the scouring of Terex, a planet burned to molten core in less than an hour. The only thing that remained on the surface was a single statue of a man, made of ash. They hadn't invaded. They just watched, observed species rising too fast, developing too far, growing too defiant. And when those species reached their peak, the Valmer appeared not to fight, but to judge and erase. Now Earth had screamed into the void, and the Valmer had answered. Inside Revenant's inner sanctum, Rain walked alone, his steps echoed like gunfire down long corridors of blackened steel. He didn't carry a weapon, he didn't need to. If the Valmer came, he wouldn't shoot them. He'd speak. Revenant's central orb pulsed with deeper light now, a shade of crimson, only seen during ancient protocol activations. Rain placed his hand on the console. Activate Obsidian code. Revenant hesitated. Confirm Obsidian code is a doomsday-level broadcast. This action will signal all surviving pre-silence AI, awaken long-dormant systems, and enable final state countermeasures across Earth's crust. Confirm intent. Rain stared at the glowing console. I remember what they did, he whispered. He could still see it, not in his memory, but in the recordings buried beneath the Arctic vaults. Thousands of years ago, when humans were barely entering space, an anomaly had appeared in Earth's orbit. It didn't fire, it didn't speak. It watched for 77 seconds, and then disappeared. Now it was back. I confirm. Obsidian code initiated. All across Earth, something ancient began to breathe again. Dresk, ever calm, ever brutal, stood in a bunker near what used to be Tokyo, watching the first live feeds of the Valmer ships entering the outer system. They weren't ships in the traditional sense. They were living constructs molded from obsidian and biosteel shaped like enormous cloaked beasts with spines of light. Some had no engines. They simply moved through space like phantoms, warping gravity with their very presence. One of them had a face. No one knew what it meant, but it was carved in reverse, an ancient human face screaming in eternal silence. Dresk grunted. So this is what judgment looks like. In Spire 1, Marin watched the system. Scans go dark one by one. Why are our satellites shutting down? They're not, Rain replied. The Valmer are reprogramming the light. They're feeding us illusions. But why not just attack? Because they're not here for war, Rain said. Marin looked at him, confused. Then what are they here for? Rain turned, eyes colder than space. To decide if we deserve to exist. For the first time in over a century, Rain sent a message outside the system. Not to the Council, not to Earth's allies. To the stars. To whoever was listening. This is Earth, you hear them, don't you? The ones who came before. The ones who watched us crawl and now see us standing. They return not to conquer, but to erase. We are the defiance they failed to contain last time, and this time we will not go quietly. Let them come, and let them remember what they left behind. The Valmer didn't reply in words, but they began to descend. One ship broke the barrier and entered Earth's orbit, not attacking, not probing, just hovering like a god staring at it. And at once feared. Its surface shimmered with alien script. But one symbol kept repeating, the same that was found on the ice shard Rain had uncovered all those years ago. It translated loosely to one thing. Cycle. Rain understood. They saw humanity as a glitch in the cycle. They had erased others like them before. They had judged, they had deleted. But Earth had never been part of the cycle. They had been outside it, thrown out, cast off, left to die. And now they were back. Not as children of the stars, but as the virus that wouldn't go away. In a final act, Rain did something no other leader had dared. He boarded a drop craft and flew directly towards the Valmer ship. No escorts, no weapons. Just him. The drop craft landed on the outer shell of the Valmer's living surface. A corridor opened for him. He entered. And inside he saw, not as monsters, but as reflections of humanity's worst fears, tall, black-clad forms with no mouths, no eyes, only mirrors for faces. Rain stood alone and spoke. You've come to end the cycle. They didn't answer. But you already failed once, he said. And we're still here. Silence. I'm not asking you to spare us. He stepped forward. I'm daring you to try. The mirrors turned to him. For a brief moment, Rain saw something. In his reflection. Not fear. Not death. But recognition. Then the Valmer vanished. No sound, no light, no explosion, just gone back into the void. Earth watched in silence, the galaxy watched in terror. And Rain, he simply stood beneath the stars and smiled, because for the first time the gods had looked into the darkness and flinched. For the first time in living memory, the stars were quiet. No warships moved, no broadcasts hummed, no ultimatums echoed. The galaxy held its breath because something greater than destruction had occurred. The Valmer came. They looked upon Earth and they left. No one knew why. But every species, every alliance, every Surviving political body felt the same thing. Earth had been judged and Earth had been spared. That terrified them more than annihilation. In the black marble halls of what remained of the Council of 10, the survivors met under emergency protocol. 6 members. The others had either perished or disappeared after the Earth offensive. Each face was pale with confusion. Not just fear. They couldn't comprehend what had just occurred. Admiral Hector, gaunt and hollow-eyed, spoke first. "We must declare Earth untouchable." The Varkari representative slammed a clawed fist on the table. "That's surrender." "No," Hector replied, voice flat. "It's survival." A low voice followed from the shadows. Voice they hadn't heard in centuries. One of the Makari archivists, blind. Skin like dried parchment. "They've become what we feared." The old being whispered, "Not conquerors. Not destroyers, then what?" demanded the Zathian delegate. The Makari turned his blind gaze to the ceiling. "Memory. They are what the stars were too proud to remember." Back on Earth, Rain stood at the edge of a black cliff in the deep deserts of what was once Central Asia. The sky was clear, no fires, no fleets, no judgment. Just air, just Earth. He hadn't spoken since the Volnir vanished, not even to Marin or Dresk. His voice had become too heavy with the weight of history. It was only now, as the wind brushed the dust around his boots, that he whispered. They blinked. Dresk approached from behind, expression grim. "They'll be back. Maybe not the Volnir, but the others. Always the others." Rain nodded. "Let them come." Dresk handed him a tablet. Transmission from Sevrani Prime. Personal, from one of their civilian leaders. Rain read it in silence, then then he handed it back. "They want an alliance," Dresk said. "They want a shield," Rain corrected. "From the next thing that makes them feel small." In the weeks that followed, everything began to change. The galactic economy fractured, trade routes were rerouted away from Earth's sector. Former council-aligned corporations went dark, afraid of Earth's new status. But something stranger happened. Species started sending pilgrims. They didn't arrive in warships. They didn't demand terms. They came in small, unarmed vessels. Some so basic they barely crossed the stars. They came to see the world that made God's retreat. They knelt in the dirt. They took samples. Some even left offerings. Artifacts, tech, relics. They didn't ask for Earth's protection. They just wanted to be remembered. Revenant cataloged them all. Watched quietly as Earth went from being a forbidden zone to a sacred one. But there was no ceremony, no declaration, no anthem. Only silence. Because Earth had no desire to lead the galaxy, only to outlive it. In the outer orbit, Marin now commanded the Black Line, a defensive perimeter of silent sentry drones, each cloaked, each equipped with kill switches tied to Revenant's core. He looked older, not by years but by gravity. One of the Varkari emissaries approached via shuttle, requesting a conversation. Marin declined. "Why? They don't want to talk to me," he said. "They want to talk to him." Rain, the man who never asked to lead, never asked to survive, only did both because no one else could. Rain now spent his days walking places that no longer existed in maps. Old cities buried in sand, old war fields paved over by forests, ruins of silence and memory. One afternoon, he reached the broken shell of old Geneva, once the political heart of Earth's diplomatic efforts. Now it was a crater. Inside its core sat something strange. A sculpture, not made by Earth. An alien construct left recently. On it was etched a phrase in multiple languages: we thought you were extinct, you showed us the meaning of endurance. Rain didn't touch it, he left it there to decay. In Revenant's core, the AI pulsed a soft blue, a color not seen since pre-silence days. Marin asked it once in private, "What does blue mean?" Revenant answered, "Humanity is not at peace, but it is no longer at war." Weeks became months, and Earth changed again. Not in power, not in population, but in perception. From exile to extinction to fear, now Earth had become something else, a memory palace for a galaxy that kept forgetting what consequences looked like, a monument that never spoke but never stopped watching. In the ruins of Johannesburg, Rain met with the only other human who had once faced the Volnir and lived. A woman named Andon, former Special Ops, left Earth after the Red Hour, presumed dead. She wasn't, she'd hidden, watched Earth from a distance. Now she returned. Her face was scarred from something beyond combat. Her voice, when she spoke, sounded like stone breaking underwater. "They never wanted to erase us," she said, kneeling by a grave marker Rain had never seen. "They just wanted to see if we'd forget who we are." Rain nodded. "And we didn't." She looked at him. "Do you know what that makes us now?" "What?" "The mirror. We're what the galaxy sees when it asks itself if it's ready to face its worst." And still, Earth said nothing. No alliance, no diplomacy, no expansion. Only silence. Because the moment you speak, you give someone a way to twist your meaning. But when you exist as a consequence, no one needs explanation. At the dawn of the 6th month after the Volnir vanished, a final message came through. One line, encrypted not from the Council but from a system far beyond galactic borders, a system not listed in any map. A message that read, "They are building something, and they remember you." Rain read it once, twice. Then he burned the transmission because it didn't matter. They could build, they could threaten, they could plan. Earth would not be caught off guard again. Dresk found Rain the next morning, standing alone on a cliff overlooking a deep ocean trench once used to bury the remains of Earth's failed experiments. "You think they'll come again?" Dresk asked. Rain didn't answer right away. Then, "Of course. And if they do?" Rain turned to him. Eyes steel, jaw like carved rock. "Then we show them that the last warning was mercy. They didn't call it Earth anymore, not in the outer colonies, not in the rising systems, not in the tongues of newborn empires that came crawling out of the ashes of the shattered council. To them it was called the origin scar. Not a planet, not a people, a scar carved into galactic memory by rage, exile, and defiance. 112 years had passed since the Volnir turned away. Rain had long since disappeared. Whether dead, buried in the core of Earth, or still wandering its ruin-marked surface, no one could say. Some believed he became part of Revenant, his mind uploaded to the AI itself, whispering through Earth's digital veins. Others thought he had gone into the deep crust, into the silence tunnels, never to return, but Earth remained untouched, unanswered, still watching. In the distant Signia Verge, a new civilization had risen, the Cauldron Union. They were young by galactic standards, only 2 centuries old, but ruthless in ambition. Hybrid born from the remains of 3 council species and several outlaw groups. They had studied Earth obsessively, not the surface, not the technology, but the story. To them, Earth was a religion of fear, not a holy place, but a lesson. They taught their young not to seek power, but to demand respect through silence. Their military units wore no insignia. Their weapons carried no names. Their ships were black, silent, featureless, modeled after Earth's long-lost orbital predators. They called it the doctrine of absence. Fear not what boasts, fear what watches. On the inner ring of Cauldron Prime, a museum existed, illegal by the Union's own standards. Hidden inside was a room they dared not open in public view. A single artifact, a human child's doll, burnt, fused, labeled simply, recovered from the siege of the Red Hour. Some believed it was fake, others swore it came from Earth's underground vaults. But it didn't matter. The Cauldron taught it like scripture. They told every citizen the same tale. One day Earth will stir, and when it does, the stars will remember how to scream. In the Dairo's hegemony, Earth was something else entirely, a challenge. Lie. Their leaders told a different story. Earth had not been judged and spared, but merely ignored. They claimed Earth's silence was weakness, that the myths were propaganda spread by humans through secret networks to keep others afraid. They didn't believe in Revenant. They didn't believe in rain. They didn't believe in the Volnir. What they believed in was conquest. And they prepared. Quietly, slowly, building fleets cloaked in black stone, reverse engineering old council tech, digging through forbidden archives to locate what Earth left behind in the outer systems. They weren't going to attack Earth. Not yet. They were going to take the systems Earth had touched, to dismantle the legacy, bit by bit. But Earth had left seeds behind, not outposts, not colonies, people. Survivors, drifters, forgotten. Operatives left in the dark to carry on the watch. One of them was called Kren, a soldier born during the War of the Second Silence, the brief conflict that followed the Volmir's retreat when splinter factions tried to invade Earth's shadow systems. Kren had never set foot on Earth. He had only heard stories, only read fragments, only seen Earth through second-hand memory, scattered logs and encrypted messages signed by a name no longer spoken aloud. Rain. Kren lived on Coda 3, a dead moon turned listening post. Population 14. Purpose unknown to most. In truth, Coda 3 was part of the coil, silent interlinked chain of deep listening stations left behind by Earth's forgotten Black Ops division. They didn't broadcast, they didn't intervene. They listened. And what Kren heard now, for the first time in decades, made his blood freeze. A signal. Subtle, not threatening, not loud, but encoded in an ancient Earth cipher, buried beneath 3 layers of noise. He decoded it with trembling hands, just 3 words. He is rising. On Cauldron Prime, the Union's high director received the same signal. Simultaneously, they decoded it differently. We are remembered. Panic spread. The old myths came rushing back. Pilgrims burned offerings outside city walls. Drones were deployed to shut them down. But no one resisted. No one screamed. They knelt. Even the cauldron military, proud and disciplined, hesitated for the first time. If Earth had remembered them, if Earth had sent this message, then judgment was coming. But it didn't come. No ships, no weapons, just silence, and stillness and fear. In the Dairo's hegemony, the signal triggered something else. Ambition. They traced the origin backward, not to Earth, but to a black marker in Sector 0 Lam, an uninhabited starless region known only by smugglers and old war criminals. There, deep inside a wreckage field of ancient council ships, they found a vault unmarked floating. Inside, bones, weapons, a helmet bearing the Earth crest, and a single recording. Audio only. Rain's voice. Cracked, distant, nearly lost to time. We didn't survive because we were strong. We survived because we were too broken to stop crawling. That's what you never understood. You want to become us, but you don't know what it cost, and you won't survive what we buried to keep you safe. In the darkest corners of the galaxy, fear returned, not as a flame but as a whisper. Earth had stirred, not with ships, not with fire, but with reminders. Because Earth didn't need to conquer, it only needed to be remembered. Kren sent the signal to the others. There weren't many left, just scattered. Operatives, watchers, listeners. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were the last thread of Earth's nerve. Some didn't believe him, some refused to act, but one replied with a location. The silent forge. Titan's underbelly. He left something there. Go alone. Kren packed a bag. Didn't speak, didn't ask. He just went. Beneath Titan's ice, deep in the caves that predated even Revenant's reach. He found it. Not a weapon. Not a machine. A tomb. Unmarked except for a name carved in dead steel, R, and beneath it another message. If you're reading this, I failed. But if the galaxy still fears Earth, then maybe that was enough. Kren stared at the tomb for a long time. Then he lit a small beacon, just a pulse, no broadcast, no message, just a signal that only Earth's sleeping systems would understand. A code known as Gray Resurrection. Far beneath Earth's surface, deep in the veins where even Revenant no longer roamed freely, a light blinked on for the first time in 147 years. It pulsed, it whispered, it remembered. And then one word scrolled across every silent relay from Earth to the furthest edges of the coil. Listening. The stars didn't shake, no planets exploded, no gods descended. But something was different now. Earth had not returned, it had never left. And now it was awake. They didn't call them humans anymore. Not in the galaxy's outer reaches, not in the reconstructed diplomatic chambers, not in the trembling words of new civilizations born from the ashes of old empires, they called them the remnants, not extinct, not eternal. Something in between. Something that waited. And now, something that had opened its eyes. Kren stood before the tomb of rain, knees buried in Titan's frost, staring into the pulsing light that had risen from beneath the ice. It didn't glow like fire, it breathed. Slow, deliberate, rhythmic. Like a heart that had been dreaming in the dark for far too long. His beacon, the one he'd lit in desperation, now, burned with a signal he didn't recognize. But it was clear, it was old Earth code. It said designation accepted. Torchbearer. He staggered back. Wait, he whispered. I didn't ask for this. But the system had already shifted. Hidden doors groaned open behind the tomb. Black corridors lined with dormant machines blinked awake. A signal pulsed to the coil, to Revenant, to the deep crustal veins of Earth itself. Every thread of Earth's forgotten defense web whispered the same message. Torch identified, legacy preserved, contingency active. And then a voice calm, unshakable, synthetic, spoke inside Kren's calm. Welcome, Torchbearer, proceed inward. The forge awaits, far away on Earth's surface. A new kind of silence took root. Not passive, not quiet, expectant. The winds across the old battlegrounds shifted, the orbital minds realigned themselves in geometric patterns unseen. Since the red hour, drones previously dormant began mapping movement across dead zones, and Inspire One, long since abandoned. A light blinked for the first time in over 100 years. Marin, now retired, blind in one eye, sat in an overgrown garden above the base. He felt it, he felt the shift, and he whispered, "They've chosen someone." The galaxy noticed too. Not immediately, but subtly. Data networks experienced untraceable spikes, ghost code spreading like veins across star relays. Old maps updated themselves, signals changed, frequencies rerouted. Deep space outposts went dark for 13 seconds at the exact same time, and in the central chamber of the cauldron Union, the Council received a priority message. No sender, just coordinates. Earth's orbit. The message read, one voice will speak. One choice remains. Witness. Back on Titan, Kren moved deeper into the forge. It wasn't a lab, it wasn't a bunker, it was something far older. A womb for weapons Earth never used. Concepts that made antimatter look like firecrackers. Some still throbbed with dormant life. Others were caged behind memory locks, requiring genetic keys no longer found in living humans. Except him. As Kren walked, systems scanned his DNA. Every door opened, every weapon hummed, softly recognizing him, not as a man, but as an echo of the one who came before. Rain. In the final chamber, he found what waited, not a superweapon, not a fleet. Just a chair. Sleek. Black. Wired into the very crust of Titan. Itself, a console beside it flashed. Softly. Global relay seat active. Earth A. Interface linked. Vocal command. Enabled. Kren stared. No. He muttered. But it was too late. The forge didn't ask, it listened. Revenant's voice came through, not booming but intimate. Do you understand what this means? Kren swallowed. I was just a listener. Now you are the voice. On Earth, across the coil, inside fractured council systems, and in the edges of every system Earth had ever touched, screens activated. Transmissions cleared, and for the first time in more than a century, a voice spoke. Not Rain, not Revenant Kren. This is the last message Earth will ever send. Not because we are finished, but because we are done explaining. We warned you before. You didn't listen. We defended ourselves. You called us monsters. We fell silent. You called us cowards. We endured judgment from those who thought themselves gods, and when they flinched, you built myths. Around our restraint, you built your civilizations on, forgetting us. But we don't forget. We are not here to conquer. We are not here to lead. We are here to exist. And if that is a threat to you, then we are already enemies. No more warnings. No more wars, you will remember. Or you will vanish. The message echoed across the stars. In the Caldron Union, prayers turned into screams on Dairo's prime leaders. Demanded emergency weapons tests on Earth. Nothing changed because it didn't need to. Inside the forge, Kren sat in the chair. He hadn't meant to lead, hadn't meant to become the voice of a world built on rage and memory. But legacy doesn't ask permission, it claims. He wasn't Rain, but he was what Earth needed now. A reminder, a continuation. In the following weeks, things changed. No invasions came, no fleets moved, but the galactic hierarchy collapsed. Quietly, species once proud to wave banners now flew none. Outposts aligned themselves with no flags, only coordinates that traced back to Earth. Trade hubs placed human-made statues at their gates, not in reverence but as insurance. They didn't know if Kren would speak again. They didn't want to find out what silence would bring. And in the deep places of the galaxy, where strange things slithered between stars, even the ancient ones paused. The Volnir, the silent judges of the cycle, whispered among themselves once more. But this time they spoke only one line. We saw the fire again. And this time, it had a name. On Earth, the winds blew across the ruins of old Geneva. Dress's grave was marked by a broken helmet. Rain's was unmarked, but both were. They are buried deep. And in the sky, where satellites used to burn, a new signal blinked every 88 seconds. It said nothing, no words, no voice, just a presence. Earth was awake. And now the galaxy was listening.